To those of you who are seeing television for the first time, and who are therefore the people for whom this film is primarily intended, we'd like to sound a note of caution. Television is essentially the entertainment of the home viewer, and is the family group that our producers and artists normally consider to be their audience. And so if this, your first introduction to television, is not by your own fireside, do believe me when I say that you'll enjoy it so much more when you meet us once again.
If you assume that British television as an institution was always whiter than white, you wouldn't be far wrong. And yet, black people appeared on British television's opening night, although there wasn't a black population of anything like the same size as there is now. It's taken a long time for white people in British television to acknowledge the presence of the black population in Britain and to represent its talents and diversity on the screen. The few images of this kind which appear have been forgotten because British television finds it difficult to have a memory. And in the course of remembering, let's not forget that images of this kind haven't appeared without a struggle. This program will begin to rediscover those suppressed and oppressed parts of our cultural heritage.
The vision and sound are on. The station goes on the air.
Buck and Bubbles, a black American song and dance team, sang and danced in the new dawn of British television, temporarily escaping the segregationist practices of American society and television. The black, as popular entertainer, has never left our screens since. The type of entertainment that was on offer was of a very restricted and rarefied kind. Black entertainers added that special touch of difference for the predominantly white viewers.
If you want to go gay, yes, the rhythm's okay in Harlem, 'cause Harlem's built that way.
I don't know why there's no sun up in my sky, stormy weather, since my man and I ain't together. Keeps raining all the time.
We went out there, and you had to step over all the cables that were all over the floor, some as big as water things in the street, some very narrow like we have here. And you had to climb over a whole sea of cords to get to the camera, you see. And when you got to the camera, they just stood you there, and the camera was there. You know those old-fashioned cameras that they used to take pictures in the man put the black thing. Well, they did that there, you see. They had the black thing over their head, you see. And you just stood there. You had no makeup on. You didn't need it. Everybody was white. You only had eyes and black lips, because it's black and white, of course. And you just stood up there and you sang your song like this, you know. Blah, blah. And then you waited until they said, well, they used the word cut or blackout or whatever. Then you moved away, you see.
Oh, now I can't give you anything but love, baby. That's the only thing I let me of, baby. You know why? You're sure to find happiness, and I get one let.
Scarlet ribbons for her hair.
I want an old-fashioned house with an old-fashioned fence and an old-fashioned millionaire.
If you were American, they accepted you. American media, American black people had Ebony magazine and all their own media working for them. There's so many millions of them in America. Here in England, we didn't have the Voice and all that. I mean, West Indian Gazette came up later. The Voice came yesterday, and so on and so forth. We had to wait to see if the Telegraph would take note, or the Guardian, or whatever. And it meant that that we suffered a lot. And we learned early on that to be American black, or to have that American gimmick, worked.
When the BBC did All God's Children Got Wings, and it was the first time that I had appeared in a BBC television production, and with black and white in the cast. I was lucky. I played his rather sort of blue-stocking sister, who was very keen, very interested on putting the black point of view, that it was important to be proud and courageous because you're black. It's much more important for you to do so, and to be very, very proud of your blackness. And in a way that identified with my own thinking and my own feeling. And it was a very, very exciting experience because television was still in its infancy. I think it was the most important thing for the BBC to do at that time. When we think back, what a different world we're in now, different world for black people.
We citizens of Malaya, whatever our color or creed, are proud to belong to this great family of nations. And along with the other members of the Commonwealth, we celebrate this historic occasion. It has a special significance for you boys and girls, the young citizens of Malaya.
The Archbishop held the glittering crown of England on high, and the Queen is crowned.
I now speak for all loyal Africans. God save the Queen.
We were all taught that we were British subjects, and we believed so. The Queen of England is our queen, but now I find that in coming here, that we are treated as something different.
A lucky family can get a room to itself. Others have to share, sometimes 5 or 6 in a room. Is the housing problem reinforced by a colour bar? Some people think so.
Me and my husband went to buy a house, and they told my husband, with him being coloured, he would have to pay £400 deposit if it was in his name. But if it was in my name, I would have to pay £150 deposit.
It's nearly a year since the first coloured man was accepted for training on the corporation buses. Now there are about 300 of them. A Birmingham citizen said to me, they didn't half make a difference on the buses, these coloured chaps, wreathed in smiles and politeness even at 7 in the morning. It made a nice change, he said. Some of the coloured busmen's white mates at the Hockley garage certainly don't share that view, yet they must be familiar with it, because they assumed at once that special inquiry had come to Birmingham to glorify the coloured busman. So they barred us out.
The bus corporation were frightened that we were going to sort of suggest that the West Indian bus people were far better. So they went on strike. They called a strike, headlines in the local paper, and that became a bore because it was a tricky subject anyway. You weren't sort of going out and you had to be fairly careful because as colour prejudice. How do you get people to talk about colour prejudice in front of a camera? And that strike became a national story.
Manners are different too. In Jamaica, this is the normal way to attract the attention of the man behind the bar. In English pubs, they don't approve of it. To the coloured man, it sometimes seems that his most innocent actions provoke an ungracious disapproval. Suspicion hardens on both sides.
Hello, Cousin Alvin. I hope you're well as I am too. Things still bad enough in Jamaica, and I wants to tell you that I'm leaving this place. I'm coming soon to London, and I hope you're not too grand to know your cousin Cleve when he gets off that boat.
My husband, him sent for me, and now him not here to meet me. I got luggage, I got baby, I got plenty things, and him not giving me any help.
But you haven't completed your journey yet. You have to take the train to Waterloo Station.
I don't want to go to Waterloo. I want to go to London Station.
Waterloo is in London. I expect your husband will meet you there.
Mister, how can I find this place?
It's in London. This a friend you're going to?
This is my cousin. Me told him come meet me, but me can't see my tar.
He'll probably meet you at Waterloo.
How am I gonna get there?
You're going to the train over there. Have you a ticket?
No, sir. Me got no ticket.
Then you buy a ticket from that booth over there. Understand? Then go to customs and check your heavy luggage, okay? All right. Take this and read it. It'll give you lots of useful information about England.
I remember Elliot's play, A Man from the Sun, because it was another landmark for me. It was a play about working class black people. And in this play, we were real. We were not stereotypes. We were real people. And I think it gave a voice to the black people who had recently come.
Me come here for work, me na come here for idle. Day da light and me want go home. 6 hand, 7 hand, 8 hand bunch. Day da light and me want go home. Day-o, day-o. Day da light and me want go home.
What you saying about? God, stone of crows, you Nixon half punk.
What do you mean, punk?
Punk stink. Why don't you learn English?
English is my mother tongue and I don't stink.
Not half you don't.
It's just coconut oil I put in my hair.
Well, do you want to make something of it?
You call me stinking nigger, but I cleaned on you.
Ah, pipe down.
Don't knock me, mister. Don't want no trouble with you.
Then shut your face.
Look, I warn you, mister.
That's enough. You try that now. Kick your teeth in. Let me go and I'll murder the little black bastard.
That's enough, I said. Drop that.
I thought the clash between this mythical Britain and the actual grotty, real Britain that West Indians would face when they got here was a terribly important and exciting conflict, and that I wanted to write something about it and do something about it.
Hello, dear Mama. After this little time, things is not too bad. I'd like to send you some money, but I not got a job just yet. England is a wonderful, strange place, but it's my home now, for better or for worse.
It is still good for a West Indian to come here and taste the mature atmosphere of ages of civilization. England is so rich with the culture of the past that nothing the living can do can destroy the vast wealth of accumulated tradition over the years. Anybody can come in and take no notice of the living. We can elevate ourselves learning from the dead.
Love, cause I love you. But the majority of you don't love me. But within a black man and a white man community, a black man accept you with all his heart more than how you accept me. Because you will walking with me, talking with me, having a drink with me, buy me a drink in the pub, or invite me home to your house. But the facts still remain. You live and you have something in here, a little complex, like you's better than me.
I felt that this was being deliberately excluded from the screens and the loudspeakers of the country, and I disapproved of that. After all, I was in broadcasting in order to liberate the feelings and ideas of people whom I regarded as important and worthwhile. And as soon as I started to talk to people in Handsworth, it became bloody obvious to me that there was a degree of poetry, a sense of expression, a political feeling struggling to get out, and what we did was to liberate it.
Asian Club. In the chair for tonight's program is Anil De Silva.
Good evening. The subject of our meeting tonight is justice and the law. May I introduce our guest speaker? He's one of the greatest legal figures in this country, the Right Honourable Sir Norman Burkitt.
I would say 90% of the black, Afro-Asian, Malayan, Chinese people who came into England found their way to us. Some Israelis as well. We had people who came from outside who were looking for representation in a source where they felt at ease. And they were very much at ease with us because we had a similar background. The background was colonialism. The background was that we had been ruled by other people we were now becoming ourselves.
She decided then she wanted to have an agency so she could sort of look after, we were then coloured, look after coloured artists in London. And she set up her agency, and it was very, very successful. She was such a dynamic personality. She made things happen for us. You know, she took chances, she took risks, you know, and we learned a lot from her life, and the way she handled situations. Pearl was the mother of us all.
People in trouble. During the post-war years, television began to develop its various popular genres, and it also began to construct blacks as a social problem, whether in the development of studio magazine discussion programs, light entertainment, the crime series, or the early plays for today. How were blacks typically implicated in these new developing genres?
You, sir, I imagine, Mr. Wentworth Day.
The visual threat blacks posed couldn't be brought closer to home than through the prospect of miscegenation.
Well, I've been there and seen them in their own home surroundings. And as a parliamentary candidate, I've been into a good many working-class houses. Where there have been, oh yes, indeed, where there have been many mixed marriages, and I've seen the children. And my view is this, that no first-class nation can afford to produce a race of mongrels.
Good evening. 1,001 tonight. That'll be our score at the end of this evening's Tonight. So tonight we thought we'd begin as we did 1,000 programs ago with Cy Grant.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Hip hip hooray for the BBC. 3, 2, 3, 2, 1. 1,001 nights ago it begun. Tonight's been going for 4 long years, and the team's still smiling through its tears. They are older now than at the start, but they're all still young in Derek's heart.
I felt that at times my dear friend Cliff Mitchell was a bit patronizing. He was kind of smile and tap me on the shoulder, you know. Yeah, like a friendly little, you know, performing animal or something. That's not, it sounds a bit rough, but I felt it was a bit paternalistic at times. Tonight was great. It was fun, but there was a terrible price to pay. A terrible price. I had been an established actor in film, starring as an actor, but nobody saw me anymore as an actor. And I never got asked to play any parts anymore.
Cy Grant was probably on the Tonight Show sort of the most prominent black performer that one saw every night, because it was on every night, you know, and I, being a very political animal, even at that young age, I used to watch it every night. So he was the most sort of performer, like black performer I saw all the time. But I wouldn't say he was a role model, but I used to like him. I'd always wanted to have his job because I wanted to meet all those people they used to have on there. They used to have like Adelaide, Stevenson, all those kind of people on there, and I wanted to meet all these political people. So when I was invited on it, I was really pleased.
Sadek, it's in your hands now. I've done all I can. The rest is up to you. afraid there's nothing more I can do. The left hand. Watch your feet! Don't play with him! Right here. I gotta get. Go on, downstairs. Don't bank on it. Take charge of that, Smith.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Did you notice anything?
What?
About him?
Yeah, he was left-handed.
He walked out.
Oh, yeah, he did.
Treat them like animals. You get animals to deal with. Treat them like normal human beings. Probably they won't understand what you're talking about, but you got more chance of getting them to do as they're told.
Yeah, well then.
I'm sorry. Did you say something?
No.
You were expecting me to say thank you?
I said nothing.
Why should I thank you? What have you done? Taken my children from me.
Now look, Mrs.
You
it
have
wasn't what I
only
should
done
have...
your duty as policemen. If you had been like those men jeering at me, would you have done as much?
Now go on, book up, will you?
If I were like you, then perhaps I would say thank you and not mean it, because I have nothing to thank you for. I am not like you. We are not like you. We are like ourselves.
Come on.
When you help me because I am Indian and you are a white man, then perhaps I will say thank you.
Mrs. Sadek.
Yes, I'm coming.
Oh, here, let me help you.
No. Will I be able to see my children in the morning?
Yes, yes, of course.
When?
Oh, whenever you want. I mean, nobody's trying to keep them from you.
You have the addresses?
Oh, yes, yes.
Come on, Jock.
Thank you. When can I see my husband?
See him in court at 10:30 in the morning.
I would like to cry.
And Alak conveyed beautifully that quality of leave me alone and I'll manage. I mean, she didn't want the police to interfere when those men were ganging up on her. She felt she could deal with it. But the inevitable social interference of society in her life destroyed her life. And I think the last moment when we circle the cast and look at them, the pressure of despair that we watch as we look at her face and Seka's face and the children. And then we come to Fancy Smith, who is, he's at the edge of a philosophical discovery. And happily for him, he doesn't have to deal with it because a small crime starts and he rushes off. Thank God, he says. And he's saying thank God for all of us.
It would seem that by the mid-1960s, British television had found its mission to shock. And one of the most striking dramas of the period which did this was Fable.
Identity card?
Fable took the social construction of race, anxiously produced in current affairs programs of the period, and reverse the roles of black victims and white perpetrators, and in so doing, shock the
Give me
nation.
your residential permit and your work permit. Hurry up.
Its broadcasting date was shifted because the BBC thought that it would have a harmful effect, influencing the forthcoming Leighton by-election.
One of the cast told me that it would not be understood. They would say, that's what happens if you make blacks policemen and put them in control. Those were his words, not mine. And I said, oh no, it couldn't happen. Everybody will understand that it's an ironic comment on, well, after it went out, I got a letter. And it said, I really enjoyed that play. Boy, you showed them what would happen if they, it didn't even need to specify who he was talking about, if they came to power.
When do your children get home from school?
What?
Oh, come along then.
Yes, I suppose I must.
Are you going?
It's getting late. Her children...
Oh, yes, of course, just...
Oh, no, really, I couldn't.
Nonsense. Buy them, well, something from me. Please.
Oh, then wouldn't it be
Oh, don't think about it. Did we pay his week's salary all this week?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Come and see us again.
Thank you.
If there's anything you need.
Come along.
Goodbye.
I read the script and recognized this was an extraordinary, wonderful part for a young black actor. I was flattered to be asked to do it. But I also remembered having a deep gut feeling that, or possibly, it might do more harm than good. People in England, by nature, are very conservative and would not get the point. I was proved right because questions were asked in the House.
His name is Mark Fellows, and he is a famous man, a prophet. Honored in his own country, he has been under house arrest for 2 years. He is a writer, novelist and dramatist, pamphleteer. A man of conscience, a writer for the whole world. His books have been published and republished, translated and proclaimed, the authentic voice of protest.
A man wrote to me from Brighton. Quote, how dare you appear on our television screens, even as friends or liberals. Get back to your country. Turn over page, hideous ape. Extraordinary.
I played the part of Louise Marler, African doctor from a wealthy family, come to England to train and do, I suppose, what do you call it? A houseman I was at the time, house doctor. And this affair started with Giles, and we walked out together for weeks. And then we were supposed to kiss in a bedroom. The papers got hold of it and all the objections. It was suggested that the kiss would be unfit for viewing at 7:30 because there might be young people watching. And we never did get our kiss in the bedroom. We ended up kissing in the garden, quite sedately.
What are you doing?
I want to kiss you.
What for?
Just because. Oh, that's better.
Ellie called for me tomorrow.
Yes, and me. Old Grumpy Grant will be on the trail again, I bet.
Yes. Thanks for a lovely evening.
then Giles's family objected to him having a black fiancée, black wife. So the romance had to be broken off. Much to my disgust, I'll hasten to add. I was really looking forward to the character developing further and me actually getting married to Giles at the time. Never happened. Shortly after that, I was written out of the series. Got bitten by a snake. And the body was carted off, and that was the end of Louise Marler.
Life was a battle fought for her spirit, and keeping it was her prize.
I had a young boyfriend, actually. He was sweet. He used to come and deliver the bakeries every day to the home, and I used to like to meet him. And we used to just have a chat and everything.
And he was your boyfriend?
Yeah. Well, one night he asked me to go out to the pictures, you see. And coming back, we went for a walk along the promenade. And just sort of kissing and cuddling and mucking about and everything.
It was very interesting because it was totally improvised. And I was sent the book, and I read the book, because first of all I was told to memorise as much as I could about it, about Millie's character. And then a couple of days later I had a phone call saying, no, sorry, forget all that, just read it through very quickly and that's it, and you'll get a script. So I tried to forget what I'd already remembered. And then for about 3 weeks before we started filming, I kept on getting these conflicting phone calls. So eventually, by the time we got down to filming, and Tony Parker started interviewing me. It was great because he said, now, after so-and-so, what happened, Millie? And I'd say, oh, I went to another children's home in Cumberland. And then, oh, sorry, no, I didn't that time. And so it actually came out as it would do in real life.
Oh. I should leave her alone. Well, what's the matter with her? Why is she crying? She got the letter. What letter? The letter of eviction. Should they come and talk her kids away now?
Well, I went in front of the committee and they said, why not put your two eldest in institutions? Then we can rehouse you, they said.
Here, do you mind if I give you a tip, dear? Don't go taking a bath because there's tramps what's getting it.
I had an interview to go and see Ken Loach, and I went along there, and the T-boys, I thought, came and said, oh, hello, Cleo. Nice to meet you, come on in. And it was actually Ken Loach. He looked so young. And it was great because he was actually the first person, up until then, all the interviews I'd been for, they assumed because you were black that you were either from Trinidad or from Africa, and consequently that you have an accent. So I cultivated this accent, which I had a sort of all-purpose African accent, and I had an all-purpose West Indian accent, because nobody ever expected you to speak with a Cockney accent. But Ken was the first person I ever worked for who said, great, we'll use you as you are. In those early days, you never ever saw anybody who was black as a technician, maybe the odd scene shifter, but certainly not on the technical side, and also makeup-wise as well. I mean, and you go into the makeup thing and there'd be this array of white makeup, so I start frantically mixing around, trying to get some deeper colours and everything. I mean, now that's all fairly organised.
And there was a very strong feeling at that time, it was really the birth of West Indian contribution to English culture. There was a feeling at that time that West Indians should be given a chance, to be considered and treated and imagined as being people, in the same way women were fighting to become considered as people. And people whose possibilities and whose talents were much greater than they were allowed to show.
Well, sooner or later it was bound to arise, wasn't it?
What was?
Well, there'd be some big issue. We've been able to rub along because nothing has arisen between us yet that we haven't been able to shrug off.
Well, one thing.
But one thing that's made that all easier is that I'm an educated man. I speak the language. I practice the law. I conform to a pattern of behavior that you recognize. But when something comes up between us that we can't agree on, that we really deeply can't agree on, it comes out.
Look, John, if your wife was West Indian...
Our child is half Jamaican. And that's an embarrassment I've brought into your family.
You're not embarrassed. We love Jo. Well, naturally, we want her to have the best of everything we in this country have inherited.
Even though Mary married a...
Black man? You know I never use that word.
Well, maybe you should.
I think I can talk about this now, that Errol became more and more frustrated in not achieving what he thought he would achieve, in not getting to where he felt he could get, because he was a very versatile man, brilliant actor, and a collection of plays, and the things that your own actors here, when that happens to them, they become somebody. Somebody knows about them in somebody's book. Somebody's reviewing them. Somebody's having a little poetry evening or some kind of reading about them. That didn't happen. And eventually he was brought right down to his knees in the sense of the frustration of not getting things done, you know? His talent was always there, but the ability to project it, he kind of dropped out altogether. We couldn't reach him, you couldn't contact him. And he went back to the West Indies, walked about in his native land, Trinidad. And then he came back to England, isolated, lonely, feeling forgotten, dejected. And as you know, he died alone in his bed. He was found by his landlady. And that's the end of one of the real ones of us. A good man, gone from frustration.
I mean, after all, why is it difficult to accept a black man's performance as King Lear on stage, but might be perfectly acceptable on the radio or on a disc, which you can't see? That shows some basic racism. And we felt very strongly we've got to fight this. Well, we had several meetings, and then Equity decided to form a subcommittee, and that got off the ground. The next difficulty was trying to convince directors and writers that they should write parts for blacks. When I say black, it's euphemism for Asians or Chinese or whatever. There's non-Caucasian. And unfortunately, some of these people's attitudes were that they knew nothing about the black experience. In other words, they can't write parts for black people or Indian actors. All I could think of was, oh, good God, you have to be a murderer to know about murders? And that attitude still exists today. Well, that is offensive.
Racial tensions in North American cities during the rise of the Black Power movement made for dramatic coverage on British television.
Our movement aims to give Afro-Americans a sense of purpose.
We aim at a world revolution of black and colored rising against former slave masters.
It aims to free us from the universal slave master, which is capitalist oppression.
Black people should realize that freedom is something that they have when they're born. And anyone who stands in their way of freedom is their enemy. Yes?
Blacks had been constructed as a social problem in current affairs programs, and tensions of a similar kind were anticipated in the scaremongering dread of Enoch Powell's Rivers of Blood speech. To what extent did television shape these understandings?
And we've got to end segregation somewhere.
This brings us, you know, to England a bit, because here in Britain, we've got the beginnings of racial tensions being caused by the influx of immigrants. And now, there's very few people in Britain now who don't accept the need for some sort of control of immigration, and a lot of people want it abolished. They don't want immigrants to come at all. Now, from the logic of your viewpoint, that should be something to condemn, the control of it.
Oh, definitely. I would think that a healthy society would condemn this if we are going to come to the point that race is not a factor, that color is not a factor, and I think this should be all over the world, then we would condemn this kind of restriction.
Racial issues were exploding around the world. If you were a current affairs or documentary program like This Week, which I started on in television, or Man Alive, which I then went on with my partner to run from the mid-60s, it would have been impossible to ignore one of the biggest single running story issues available to the current affairs or documentary maker, which was that the racial problems were exploding around the world. Remember, it was Mississippi, it was Martin Luther King, it was the Alabama bus boycott. We were bringing in, because we needed the labor, boatloads of people from the West Indies whom we were welcoming, but whom we then went on to resent, to have prejudice about, to have intolerance about. And any journalist, any documentary maker worth his salt at all could not ignore that as one of the issues in the front line of his attention.
And you never even look at the little dog to see what is wrong. You're carrying the dog before you look at the child. 60% of English people suffering from personal fault. Pride, you know, pride, fear. Because you have done so much bad things to us in the past, you believe we'll get on top and do the same thing back again. Fear, that's what's killing you a lot. Fear and ignorance. Ignorance and fear. Intelligent fools you lot you are. You're going to cut because of the color of the skin. What can you do about this?
Nothing.
Then why you worry about it then, go?
Oh, don't worry about it, mate.
What can you do about it?
I work with you.
You work made for everybody. You live, born and die. No, you can't be none with you. What are you do about it?
I work with you, chap.
Race violence in this country can blow up over simple misunderstandings. This row started over a white-owned dog that bit a coloured child. But Jamaican-born Mrs. Tyson and her son John stay well out of it. This is a part of Birmingham with a very mixed population, the kind of area where Enoch Powell's speeches are like a spark to tinder.
He was the man with the match, and he did touch the blue fuse paper, and he did blow it wide open, and the results were appalling. It allowed a screaming level of prejudice to enter our society, and it even produced, to the shame of those that talked about it, politicians, suggestions for a ministry of repatriation to send West Indians back to the West Indies with some kind of payoff, some kind of colour redundancy, you know, a check for having a black skin.
After the Powell scare recently, there were a lot of opinion polls, and there was a poll that was 99-point-something% that all kind of people should go back home.
If I think of the difference between then and now, the main difference is that now what you feel is the presence of a whole community, a whole way of life. You know? Whereas then you felt that they were sort of, they were interlopers. They just dropped in for a few months, and their presence here was a real problem. But they wouldn't be here for long, and so what you got was a kind of grating noise as British society sort of took them in and became accustomed to a few of them living in a small enclave. That's about all. It was essentially news. And they were constituted very much in terms of their inability to understand British life, of the tendency to crime, tendency to violence. Notting Hill was always a kind of exotic venue for, you know, black underlife and hustling, etc. Very selective representation, and entirely in the voice of somebody else.